You think she was guilty? Then explain the way she smiled when the sword came down. It is the 19th day of the rose season, a dawn without color. Inside the Tower of Velmir, deep beneath the weight of history and damp stone, sits the last queen of the realm, Leora Vexen. Her body trembles, not from cold, but from a heavier certainty. Today, her life ends. The walls sweat. The floor breathes mold. From just beyond the narrow slit of a window, the hollow knock of hammers echoes, not randomly, but rhythmically, like a death clock. Carpenters are raising a scaffold, her scaffold. She is dressed in two colors, gray for mourning, white for virtue. Both chosen by others. Chosen not to honor her, but to manipulate how the world will remember her. Not as a queen betrayed, but as a woman forgiven. The scent of burning incense mixes with iron and rot. In the chapel, priests chant prayers, but no one prays for truth, only silence. Nearby, a sword is being polished, not an axe. An execution by sword is reserved for royalty. A mercy, they call it. Her ladies-in-waiting surround her like fading silhouettes, pale, silent, already in mourning for someone not yet dead. They dress her like an offering. They weep in ways that barely move the air. No charges have been proven, no defense permitted, no justice intended. But that never mattered. This isn't a punishment. This is procedure. Her death is not a response to guilt. It's a tool for power. Queen Leora Vexen was not destroyed by scandal. She was sacrificed to appease politics. Her husband, King Aldrich, needed a new narrative, a new queen, and a clean break. So he gave the people a spectacle. And now, the kingdom waits not for answers, not for justice, but for blood. But if this was justice, what did they call cruelty? The descent began, as most executions do, with a loss of promise. Weeks before the axe was ever sharpened, Queen Leora Vexen miscarried her second child, a son. His tiny frame never drew breath, but in a court ruled by superstition and succession, he was already too loud to ignore. At the exact same hour of that failed birth, King Aldrich was thrown from his horse in a joust and struck in the head. He lay unconscious for 2 hours. Physicians feared he wouldn't wake, but he did to a kingdom that whispered too loudly about divine signs. The king had survived. The son had died. God had spoken, and he had chosen Aldrich, not Leora. That moment marked a silent, irreversible shift. The woman who had once shattered a continent, who had once made a king defy the holy seat, was now seen as cursed. She had failed not as queen, not as wife, but in the only role the court truly valued, as mother to a male heir. Enter Chancellor Morwen, the king's architect of endings. A man who understood the game too well to leave things messy. Divorce? Too risky. Nullification? Too weak. Aldrich didn't just want out. He wanted absolution, and blood was its price. The first piece on the board was Jaren Liss, a young court musician. Beautiful, clever, poor, and expendable. On the final day of Bloomtide, he vanished. No explanation, no escort. He was seen entering Morwen's manor. 2 days later, he re-emerged. But he was not the same. His hands trembled. His eyes avoided every gaze, and his lips were full of names. He confessed, not just to adultery with the queen, but to precise details of when, where, how often. The words had the stink of a script, rehearsed, tailored, too perfect to believe, too perfect not to be used. Within hours, the net widened. Damon Thorne, the king's longest-serving confidant, a man who had shared Aldrich's hunts, secrets, and strategies, was arrested during a festival banquet. The charge? Treason by way of lust. It was an absurd accusation. Damon was known for his restraint, his loyalty, his discipline. But that was the point. The more unbelievable it seemed, the more shocking it felt. And shock makes people obedient. 2 days later, Callan Wren, the knight with no enemies, arrested before dawn, still in armor. His only sin? Being noticed by the wrong woman, in the wrong rumor, at the wrong moment. Then came Thayer Corin, barely 25, recently wed, the kind of man courtiers envied not for power, but for beauty. He was rich, respected, and irrelevant, until he wasn't. No motive was given, just a name added to a growing list. And then the final blow, Elias Vexen, Leora's brother. His arrest shocked even the cynics. The charge was incest, not treason, not adultery. Incest. It didn't matter that no one believed it. It wasn't meant to be credible. It was meant to be damning beyond repair. It was meant to poison memory. A queen who seduced 5 men was scandalous. A queen who seduced her brother was monstrous. No witnesses ever testified. No lovers were ever caught in the act. No letters, no jewelry, no fingerprints. Only confessions dragged from bone and silence. And the more horrific the charges became, the more silence hardened into belief. 5 names, 5 days, 5 reputations obliterated. None of the men saw trial before Leora did, because their guilt was never the point. They were not prosecuted. They were assembled like props on a stage, carefully arranged to make the queen's fall feel earned. And the kingdom watched, barely breathing. Some whispered that the queen had grown arrogant, that she spent too much time with poets, that she laughed too loud, spoke too directly, prayed too little. But none of that was crime, until Morwen named it so. The nobles stayed silent. The clergy knelt. The court murmured but dared not shout. For if the king could erase his queen, what hope had they? On the 6th day, Queen Leora Vexen was summoned. She had spent her morning watching King Aldrich play tennis, laughing, unaware that 3 of the men now accused were in the crowd beside her. She returned to her chamber with a smile. An hour later, she was arrested. The smile never returned. Lord Emmerich, her uncle, read the charges. He did not flinch. Blood, it seems, was a weaker bond than power. 5 counts of adultery, 1 count of incest, 1 conspiracy to murder the king, 1 intention to remarry after the deed. She laughed at first. The idea that she could hide 5 lovers in a palace where every footstep echoed. It was absurd. But as each charge piled on, the laughter faded. Not from fear, from understanding. She saw the machine now, and she understood. This was not justice. It was theater, and the script had already been written. Her final weeks are not lived. They are in due. Queen Leora Vexen, once the sunlit center of an empire's, the torch sconces haven't been lit in days. She eats beside shadows. She breathes inside echoes. The same palace that once lifted her above the world now lowers her into silence. Sir Garin, keeper of the tower, is not her jailer. He is he. She asked today if the moon still rises over the eastern wall. Then she laughed. But her mouth did not smile, and still she hopes. She dreams that Aldrich will remember the orchard, the candlelit letters, the way she once nursed him through fever. She believes a man who once broke the world to marry her would not now break her neck for convenience. Hope, it turns out, is more cruel than any verdict. The trials begin, but no one came for truth. They came for confirmation. The courtroom isn't a place of law, it's a gallery of vengeance, and Jaron Liss is the first painting hung. He walks with a limp now. His voice trembles not from guilt, but from whatever was done to him in Chancellor Morwen's manor. His testimony is vivid, impossibly so. He describes secret gestures, silk garments, kisses traded behind pillars, and how the queen wept after. Too detailed, too symmetrical. A confession written by someone who had never loved, only feared. Damon Thorne follows, armorless but unbowed. His refusal to kneel draws a quiet gasp. He answers the charges simply, "I did not touch my queen, and even if I had, that would not make her unworthy. It would make her human." He is pulled out before he can say more. Callan Wren refuses to speak, not in defiance, but from disgust. Thayer Coran offers one sentence before they gag him. A man with everything to lose does not wager for lust. Elias Vexen, Leora's brother, enters last. And he tries, gods know he tries to speak honorably, to defend with dignity. But one word dooms him. The king, plagued as he is by melancholic afflictions, gasps, freeze mid-air. Melancholia? They hear something else. Impotence. A royal insult wrapped in delicate lace. Elias, in defending Leora, becomes her executioner. On the 17th morning, 5 men are marched to Tower Hill. The wind blows toward the crowd, carrying the scent of iron and pine tar. The platform has been rebuilt with smoother wood this time, easier to clean. Less screaming. Liss is weeping again. No one listens. Thorne meets the blade with lips moving a prayer, maybe. Wren's knees break before he reaches the steps. Coran mutters his wife's name. Elias turns once, looks toward the tower window. Inside, Leora stands. She doesn't cry. She doesn't speak. She simply knows. 2 days pass. She is called. The Hall of Velmir is hung in velvet, not out of respect, but to absorb the sound. The nobility arrive in cold procession. Clerics place their hands over hearts. But no one looks her in the eyes. She wears black. She chose it herself. She walks barefoot. That was her choice, too. The charges are read: adultery with Liss, Thorne, Wren, Coran, incest with her brother Elias, conspiracy to murder Aldrich, intention to marry after his death. 4 pages, 77 lines. 1 sentence of defense allowed. Every name invoked is now dead. Every accusation drawn from the mouths of men starved, broken, erased. Leora listens, not to the words, but to the sound of history being reprogrammed. No one mentions the sudden vanishing of her handmaid, the only one who could testify to her innocence. No one brings up the gifts Aldrich sent her, still unopened. No one speaks of love, because love complicates executions. She is asked if she wishes to speak. She touches her sleeve, not for comfort, but to feel the stitch of her own skin before it's separated from her breath. Then she says, "The crown he gave me was woven in thorns. I only regret not seeing it sooner." The room exhales. The verdict is immediate. Guilty, on all counts. The punishment, death. By sword, a luxury for queens. A blade from the east, known to be sharp enough that the head knows nothing. A mercy, or rather, a distraction. She is escorted not to a dungeon, but to the Queen's garden, now roped off with black banners. The scaffold has been built beside the apple tree she once planted, the same tree beneath which Aldrich once knelt and offered her the crown. She climbs the steps alone. Her hands are unbound. She requested it. She will not meet death with her wrists tied like a thief. The crowd is silent, not in respect, but in ritual awe. They came for a spectacle, but now they cannot look away from the human face of it. One bird sings in the branches. One. The executioner is already kneeling. He will strike from behind. She won't see it coming. That's the protocol. She kneels. No priest, no scripture, just earth, sky, blade. She says nothing. Not because she has no words, but because no one there deserved to hear them. By mid-morning, her body is taken down, wrapped in linen, carried not to the crypt, but to an unmarked grave once used for kitchen servants. The guards say it's efficient. The chancellor says it's practical. And that night, the velvet is taken down, the floor scrubbed, the platform disassembled, the history rewritten. Leora Vexen is not remembered as queen, or wife, or mother. she is remembered as a warning. Because nothing terrifies power more than a woman who speaks too much, dreams too wide, and dares to outlive the man who made her. The queen died by sword, not axe, a so-called mercy, gifted by the very king who orchestrated her destruction. No crowd wept, no flags were lowered, no day of mourning was declared. By noon, her body had been dragged from the scaffold and discarded in an unmarked grave, a burial fit for a scandal, not a sovereign. By evening, the scribes began to write. They did not write of fear or ambition or the silence of the witnesses. They wrote of sin, of lust, of danger, of a queen consumed by her own hunger for power. They turned Leora Vexen, a woman crowned with promises and condemned with whispers, into a cautionary tale, a parable for ambitious girls and obedient wives. But what if the story they wrote was never about her sins, but about her voice? What if it was her intellect that terrified them? Her refusal to kneel when told, her ability to speak to crowds, to challenge court doctrine, to laugh when others would cry. The men who died weren't her lovers. They were collateral, each chosen not for what they did, but for how their deaths would serve a narrative. They were sacrifices, burned not on altars, but beneath banners reading loyalty, faith, purity. Her brother Elias wasn't guilty of incest. He was guilty of protecting her, of speaking plainly, of loving his sister more than he feared his king. The king, Aldrich, wasn't betrayed. He was bored, and in his boredom, he grew dangerous. He needed a clean exit, a reset. He wanted Lady Seraphine younger, quieter, untouched by scandal. And so he tore down Leora, not just from the throne, but from memory. Because memory is power. And he meant to own that too. This wasn't justice. This was preemption punishment for the future she might have shaped. If she had lived, Leora would have become more than queen. She might have shaped policy, negotiated alliances. She might have spoken. And there is no place more dangerous for a woman than the center of power, where her words might outlive her smile. So instead, they turned her into a warning. Rise and you'll be devoured. Speak and you'll be rewritten. We bury people with lies to protect thrones. We call executions justice to avoid admitting cowardice. We blame the victim because it is easier than blaming ourselves for believing the story we were fed. We rewrite women when they dare to rise without permission, dare to speak in rooms not built for their voices, dare to outgrow the roles written for them in advance. Leora Vexen wasn't destroyed for what she did. She was destroyed for what she refused to become. Silent. Her legacy was never hers. It was curated, painted, edited, and taught in royal schools as a fable. The queen who flew too close to the sun, the woman who forgot her place, the traitor whose sins cracked the crown. But none of those lines mention the truth, that she died waiting for a king who never planned to save her, that the men she was accused of loving were already dead before the trial began, that the confessions were made in basements without light, that the sword which struck her was polished not for precision, but for performance. Her execution wasn't justice, it was optics. Her trial wasn't a search for truth. It was rehearsed theater, dressed in robes. So ask yourself now, if this was what they called justice, what did they call cruelty? And while you're asking, ask this too. Who still writes the history, and who is still being erased? Because these stories are not ancient. They are in progress. They are taught in books, carved into statues, repeated at dinners, printed in gold. And somewhere beneath those layers of myth lies the truth. It is not buried, it is preserved. Under stone, under blood, under centuries of silence. And if we do not speak it now, we become its next chapter. So as we've seen, the story of Anne Boleyn's downfall is a truly heartbreaking tale of ambition, betrayal, and the ruthless power of a king. It's a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes can turn, and how even the most powerful figures can become victims of political machinations. Anne's story, though tragic, remains a captivating and important part of history, a testament to the enduring fascination with the Tudor court and its complex characters. What are your thoughts on Anne Boleyn's story? Did anything surprise you, or did this part of history change your perception of the characters involved? We'd love to hear your opinions, questions, and interpretations in the comments below. Let's get a conversation going. If you found this exploration of Anne's final days gripping, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future deep dives into history's most compelling stories. We have so much more to uncover. And speaking of more, don't forget to check out part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into the aftermath of Anne's execution and explore the legacy she left behind. It promises to be even more exciting, with deeper insights and more untold stories. See you there.